The Simpsons saw 9/11 coming years before it happened. They called Trump's presidency over a decade early. They knew Disney would swallow Fox whole long before the deal was ever discussed. People laughed those off as jokes until reality caught up. Now there's one more prediction buried in an old soccer episode, and it lines up with the 2026 World Cup almost perfectly. If The Simpsons is right again, the final may already be decided. Start with the one that still gives people chills. Lisa Simpson walked into the Oval Office and said one line that aged in the strangest way possible. She was President of the United States, and America was in trouble. Then she told her staff, "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." That episode aired in March 2000. Donald Trump did not become president until 2016. At the time, Trump was already famous, but not for politics. He was a New York businessman, a real estate name, a tabloid magnate, a celebrity who knew how to keep cameras pointed at him. The Apprentice hadn't even premiered yet. To most people, President Trump sounded like the kind of wild future only The Simpsons would throw on screen for a laugh. But the idea wasn't pulled from thin air. Around 1999, Trump had already floated the thought of running for president. He formed an exploratory committee with the Reform Party and talked about a possible campaign in public. Still, for most Americans, it felt more like celebrity noise than a serious path to the White House. The writers looked at a country where fame was starting to feel like power and pushed that idea to the edge. Then real life caught up. 16 years later, Trump entered the race for president for real. At first, many people treated his campaign like another stunt. Then he kept winning. He beat experienced politicians who had spent their lives preparing for that level of power, and he stayed in the news every single day. Scandals, arguments, protests, debates, and shocking headlines followed him everywhere, but none of it stopped the campaign from growing. In 2016, he defeated Hillary Clinton and became the 45th President of the United States. And once that happened, every strange Simpsons scene started getting a second look. One of those scenes came from 1998. The Simpsons dropped one of its strangest jokes so quietly that a lot of people could have missed it, in an episode called "When You Dish Upon a Star." Homer gets pulled into the world of Hollywood celebrities after meeting Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, enjoys the good life, ruins it in classic Homer fashion, and near the end, the show cuts to the Fox studio lot. That's where the strange part appears. On the studio sign, 20th Century Fox is shown as a division of Walt Disney Company. At the time it looked like a quick background joke. Nobody in the episode stopped to explain it or treated it like some huge announcement. It just sat there on the screen, almost like the writers were mocking the most unlikely thing they could think of. And back then it really did sound unlikely. Fox and Disney felt like completely different worlds. Disney was the polished family empire, with princesses, theme parks, and a carefully protected image. Fox had a sharper edge, louder, rougher, more willing to push jokes that made powerful people and big companies look ridiculous. The Simpsons itself was one of the best examples of that. The cartoon family that mocked American life, television, politics, religion, celebrities, and corporate power at every chance. So the joke made sense. What if even Fox, the home of The Simpsons, eventually got swallowed by Disney? 4 years, that was all it was, a funny little jab at Hollywood. Then the real world caught up. In 2019, Disney completed its massive purchase of major 21st Century Fox assets, a deal worth about $71.3 billion. Disney took control of major film and television businesses, including the 20th Century Fox Studio, FX, National Geographic, Fox Television production units, and a larger stake in Hulu. And just like that, the old Simpsons joke became real. Not every Simpsons prediction is that straightforward. Some are far stranger and far darker. In 1993, The Simpsons aired an episode where Springfield opens its own casino, pulling the whole town into the bright, loud world of gambling, money, and Las Vegas-style entertainment. 2 flashy performers appear, named Gunter and Ernst, clearly built to remind viewers of Siegfried and Roy. The costumes, the stage lights, the dramatic performance, and most importantly, the white tiger. The 2 performers stand in front of a crowd, acting like they have full control over a wild animal. Then the tiger turns on them. At the time, nobody saw it as some chilling prediction. It felt like obvious satire. Siegfried and Roy were world famous for performing with white tigers in Las Vegas. Then 10 years later, the cartoon scene stopped feeling so funny. In 2003, Roy Horn was performing at the Mirage in Las Vegas when one of the White Tigers, Montecore, attacked him during the show. Roy was bitten, dragged off stage, and critically injured. He survived, but the attack ended the famous Siegfried and Roy stage show and changed his life forever. Then there's the prediction people still can't look at the same way. In 1997, The Simpsons aired The City of New York vs. Homer Simpson. The story sends Homer to New York after Barney takes his car on a wild night out and leaves it parked near the World Trade Center, so Homer has to travel there to get it back. He ends up stuck right at the World Trade Center, waiting near his car, angry, hungry, and desperate to leave New York as fast as possible. At the time, it was just a funny episode about Homer having the worst possible trip to the city. Then came the detail people still talk about today. In one scene, Lisa holds up a brochure advertising a trip to New York for $9. The number 9 is large on the page, and right beside it are the Twin Towers. After September 11th, people looked at that image again and saw something they couldn't unsee. The 9 sitting next to the two towers looked like 9/11. That single image became one of the biggest Simpsons prediction theories ever. After the attacks, the episode became uncomfortable to air because the World Trade Center was so central to the plot. For a long time, many viewers stopped seeing it on television, and when it came back in some places, parts of it were edited or handled carefully because the towers were no longer just part of the New York skyline. They had become part of one of the most painful days in modern history. After that, the show took its strange predictions into the world's biggest sport. Homer Simpson should never have been trusted with the World Cup, and that's exactly why the episode felt funny at first. In You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, Lisa calls Homer a hero because, for once, he does the honest thing, and that moment somehow carries him all the way into the biggest football tournament on Earth. Suddenly Homer isn't sitting on the couch with a donut. He's on the field in Brazil wearing a referee kit, making calls in front of millions of fans. Then the joke turns darker. The World Cup looks beautiful from the outside, stadiums full, but behind that bright picture the episode shows something rotten. A top official from a fictional football organization appears and openly talks about corruption, not shocked by it, not treating it like a small problem, talking like the whole system has been poisoned by money and power. Then he gets arrested. At the time it felt like a sharp football joke. Everyone knew the World Cup wasn't only about goals and national pride, but also television deals, sponsors, hosting rights, and powerful men making huge decisions behind closed doors. Then, 1 year later, the real scandal exploded. In May 2015, football's most powerful organization was hit by a corruption case so large it shook the sport worldwide. 14 people were charged, 9 of them football officials, 5 sports marketing executives, with charges including racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering conspiracies. Officials and executives were accused of turning world football into a private money machine, with bribes and secret payments shaping who could sell, broadcast, and profit from tournaments watched by billions. More than $150 million in bribes and kickbacks had been paid or agreed to. Swiss police arrested several officials in Zurich inside a luxury hotel just before FIFA's annual Congress, and the image of FIFA changed almost overnight. It had looked untouchable for years, controlling the biggest sporting event on the planet. Then suddenly the headlines weren't about goals or trophies but arrests, bribes, and corruption. FIFA's president wasn't arrested that day, but the scandal surrounded him while he was still its face. He won another term shortly after the arrests, but days later announced he would step down. The same World Cup episode didn't stop with corrupt officials. It also put Brazil and Germany on the same path for the 2014 World Cup, and in the cartoon, Germany beat Brazil 2-0. At the time, it looked like a simple football joke. A few months later, the real World Cup came to Brazil, and what happened next was far worse than anything the cartoon showed. This was a World Cup semi-final inside Brazil, with the whole country watching. Brazil had won the World Cup more times than any other nation, and fans believed the team had to protect the pride of a football nation. Then Germany scored. It looked painful but normal at first. Big matches have early goals, strong teams recover. Then Germany scored again. Miroslav Klose got the second goal and became the highest scorer in World Cup history, a moment that should have been one of the biggest stories of the match, except there was no time to sit with it because Germany kept coming. Toni Kroos scored twice in quick succession. Before Brazil could breathe, Sami Khedira added another. Before the match had even reached 30 minutes, Brazil were 5-0 down. The crowd went silent in a way that felt unreal. Fans stared at the field like they were watching something impossible. Some cried, some covered their faces, some looked too shocked to react at all. The pain was deeper because of what the tournament meant. Brazil hadn't hosted the World Cup since 1950, and that old tournament had left a wound the country never forgot, after losing the deciding match at home to Uruguay. So when the World Cup returned to Brazil in 2014, it felt like a chance to fix history. But Brazil walked into the Germany match already weakened. Neymar, the country's biggest star, was out after an injury, and Thiago Silva, the captain and defensive leader, was suspended. Still, nobody expected a public disaster. Germany didn't stop after the first half. André Schürrle scored twice after the break. Oscar scored late for Brazil, but by then it didn't feel like comfort. The final score was 7-1. And the strangest part is that the Simpsons didn't stop with Brazil losing to Germany. That same episode also pointed toward the one player Brazil couldn't afford to lose. Before Germany ever humiliated Brazil, the country had already lost the player the whole nation was leaning on. It happened in the quarter-final against Colombia. Brazil were still alive in their home World Cup, the crowd was loud, and Neymar was carrying the kind of pressure only a Brazilian number 10 can understand. He'd already scored 4 goals in the tournament, and for millions of fans he was the player who could drag Brazil all the way to the title. Then Juan Camilo Zuniga drove his knee into Neymar's back. Neymar dropped to the grass and didn't get back up. This wasn't time-wasting or a cheap attempt to win a foul. He was badly hurt. Brazil still won the match 2-1, but the result almost became secondary. Their biggest star had been carried out of the tournament. Neymar had fractured a vertebra in his back, and his World Cup was over. That's where the Simpsons connection gets strange. In the referee episode, Brazil also has a superstar named El Divo, flashy, talented, dramatic, famous, the kind of footballer who can change a match with one touch, but also the kind people accuse of going down too easily. That sounded a lot like Neymar, who was brilliant, fast, skillful, and dangerous, loved by Brazilian fans but also mocked by critics for rolling, falling, and exaggerating contact. In the episode, El Divo goes down during the match, and Homer has to decide whether the Brazilian star is really injured or just pretending again. A few months later, Neymar was lying on the grass in a real World Cup match, and nobody was laughing. Fans later noticed another strange detail. El Divo's boots were linked online to a Puma-style look. At the time that didn't seem important, since during the 2014 World Cup Neymar was a Nike athlete and had been for years. But years later, Neymar left Nike and joined Puma. In 2020, Puma announced a long-term partnership with him, and he became one of the biggest football names connected to the brand, wearing Puma boots. After so many Simpsons football moments came eerily close to real life, one old soccer joke now feels much bigger heading into the 2026 World Cup. In 1997, The Simpsons showed a soccer match that looked like a random joke. Almost 30 years later, that same scene is making World Cup fans nervous. The family is watching television when an advert comes on for a huge soccer game, not a small match, not a normal friendly, sold like the biggest game on earth. Then the teams appear, Mexico against Portugal. The match would decide, once and for all, which nation was the greatest on earth. At the time it sounded ridiculous. Mexico and Portugal weren't the obvious cartoon choice for the biggest football match in the world, but the scene didn't disappear. The first big revival came during the 2022 World Cup, when fans dragged the clip back online, since Mexico and Portugal were both in the tournament and Ronaldo was still chasing the one trophy missing from his career. Then it fell apart. Mexico failed to get out of the group stage, and Portugal was knocked out before the final. But the theory stayed open, since the episode never said the match had to happen in 2022. And when the World Cup moved to 2026, the old scene found a much stronger home. This time the tournament is being played in North America, and Mexico isn't just another team trying to survive. Mexico is one of the hosts, playing in front of its own fans on its own soil with the whole world watching. The tournament itself is different too. 2026 is the first men's World Cup with 48 teams, split into 12 groups of 4, with the top 2 teams from each group moving on along with the 8 best third-place teams, a format that creates a round of 32 before the tournament reaches the later knockout rounds, giving more teams a path and giving strange matchups more room to happen. Mexico and Portugal don't just need to be good. They need to survive their groups, avoid meeting too early, land on opposite paths, and keep winning while the tournament cuts everyone else down. Mexico's side of the story. already has plenty of fuel. Mexico opened the tournament by beating South Africa 2-0, then beat South Korea 1-0. Those wins made the old Simpsons clip feel louder, since every Mexico win gives fans another reason to bring the scene back. And Mexico's World Cup story carries real pain. From 1994 to 2018, Mexico kept reaching the round of 16 and falling there, again and again, the fifth match becoming the dream they couldn't reach. Then 2022 made it even worse, when Mexico didn't even escape the group. A deep run in 2026 would feel like a country breaking an old curse at home, and home can matter. Mexico City's Estadio Azteca sits more than 7,300 feet above sea level, and Guadalajara is also high, at more than 5,000 feet. That doesn't hand Mexico a trophy, but it can hurt teams unused to those conditions, where the air feels different and legs get heavy faster in the final minutes. Then there's Portugal, carrying a completely different kind of pressure, because everything around them comes back to Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo is 41 during this World Cup, no longer the young winger flying past defenders, no longer the rising star trying to prove he belongs. He's a legend chasing the one prize still missing from his career. He's won Champions League titles, the European Championship with Portugal, and scored more international goals than any male player in history. But he's never won the World Cup, which is why Portugal reaching the final would become bigger than football. It would feel like the last chapter of one of the most famous careers the sport has ever seen. Portugal isn't just emotion and nostalgia, either. Bruno Fernandes can create chances and score from midfield. Bernardo Silva can slow the game down when everyone else is rushing. Rafael Leao brings speed and danger on the wing, and Vitinha gives the midfield control and energy. But their path has already shown pressure. Portugal didn't open with the clean start fans wanted, drawing with Congo DR, a result that made the road feel tense from the beginning and made every next match heavier. The final is waiting on July 19th at the New York-New Jersey Stadium. That's the night every team is trying to reach, and if Mexico and Portugal somehow make it there, the old Simpsons scene would explode online in a way few sports theories ever have. But the most unsettling part isn't just the teams, it's what happens during the cartoon match itself. The game doesn't feel like a beautiful football dream. It's slow, frustrating, the crowd gets restless, fans lose patience. Then everything breaks down. The match turns violent, people start fighting, the stadium atmosphere slips out of control. There's no clean, peaceful ending, no perfect final whistle, no calm moment where a captain lifts the trophy and the world celebrates. The old Simpsons scene turns the match into chaos.